All right, I'd like to start off by saying Barakatah Yahweh, Ba'ashem Yahushai, Ba'ashem Ruchakodash. Welcome to another live lesson. The name of this one pretty much is just my take. And pretty much this is dealing with the situation that just came up. Obviously, it's been going on for a little while with the individual from the Columbus camp. Used to be formerly the head of the GMS Columbus, Ohio camp. And pretty much, I know Elder Pastor sent the video to us dealing with Abu. And Abu is the devil. And he's been coming at us, trying to get us for years. And his main thing, along with Vocab and them, is pretty much to try to make the Israelites look bad by any means necessary, to cast doubt on the doctrine that we're teaching. And we welcome them to do that, because at the end of the day, they're indirectly working for the Lord on the left-hand side as stumbling blocks. The scriptures speak about stumbling blocks. And these stumbling blocks are used to sift people out and to keep people away from the truth, who to learn. Now, the situation with the because there was something that Abu said in that video, the thing that I can't really experience me to read it. If not, Lord's will. Remember, I'll bring it out. If not, I'll go back and watch the video, and if the Spirit allows, then I'll speak on it. He goes by the name A, the individual in question. I remember that, and the other one is something Cadmus or something like that, King Cadmus or something like that. And pretty much years ago, I believe it was when YouTube, back in the days on YouTube, used to be able to send private messages, on the YouTube, so if somebody wanted to send you something privately or say something or ask a question privately, they would just send a message, and eventually YouTube took that out. And he sent me a message. I forget what year it was. I'm not really sure the exact year, but it was way back. I'm talking about going way back. And what he asked me, he came respectfully. He asked me, he said, he asked me if he should put GMS on their name, the camp or the page name or something like that. And I told him, to be totally honest with you, brother, don't take it the wrong way. I said, but I really don't know who you are. I said, I've seen you before, but I really don't know anything about you, So, and then I'm not sure if I said anything else after that, but I pretty much left it at that I really don't know who you are. Now, it wasn't a thing because he looked like a so-called Edomite, or he looked like an Edomite, not so-called. He looked like an Edomite. It wasn't because of that. It was just, I just didn't know him, and, we're suspicious of everybody. And shit, we're suspicious of our own self sometimes, so I told him that, and I don't know how he ended up putting the name GMS on it. I don't know if somebody else told him to do that or whatever the case may be, but I know definitely I didn't tell him to do that. But I do remember that conversation. Now, Elder Apostle Gabar did a video, which I didn't get a chance to see, dealing with the same individual, and part of the title was a cautionary tale. So I would let, Lord's will, I get a chance, I'll go back and watch that video. So I just wanted to give my take on it from what I remember, speaking to him on the private messages and him asking me that. And at the end of the day, this is not meant for everybody. The scriptures say that there are some men crept in unawares. You're going to have those that are offended. Yahweh said, many shall be offended. Then he also said, blessed is he that is not offended in me. Now, what I find crazy is, I believe he said it, that he's a white, black Hebrew Israelite. Now, make that make sense. There's no such thing as a white person or no such thing as a so-called black person. But somehow he's a white, black Hebrew Israelite. And that's a term that was put on on our group, so to speak, by people like Vocab and other individuals. Well, he just repeated what he heard, like the SPLC, I believe it is, Southern Poverty Law Center, and others that use that term, which is a governmental term, and also through Project Megiddo, which is another pretty much racist organization. But we're not racist because we're coming against supremacy, and they're labeling individuals supremacists or extremists because they have a plan, And at the end of the day, scriptures say that, fear none of those things which thou shalt suffer, for the devil shall cast some of you into prison that you may be tried, So we know that these things are coming. The accusations got to come, demonizations got to come. But as concerning him, because, that's one thing that Abu said. Are they going to rethink, their ability to, well, he used to be an Israelite, now he's not, now he's an Edomite? No, because when a so-called Negro or Latino or Native American Indian falls out of the truth, right? We don't say, well, he might be a heathen or he's a heathen, So the same thing with him. I believe he's still a Jake, but it's just the same for him. And he went his way, and that's that. He gave his reasons, for doing what he did, but at the end of the day, it just wasn't for him. And somebody put a scripture up on the Elder Pastor's page, which we haven't read in a long time. It says, he that eateth and doubteth is damned if he eat, because he's not eating to discern the Lord's body. So that's a curse unto him, for doing what he was doing, knowing he really, had questions and doubts in his mind about the truth. He should have sat down, count the cost, went through the scriptures, and waited until he was fully persuaded in his own mind before he even started speaking and teaching. Because like the video the Elder Pastor put up was woe to him, or no man having put his hand to the plow and looking back is fit for the kingdom. And that's true. And this is why we tell brothers out there, we're not really concerned with the sisters, because the sisters are not teachers. Only ones they teach is other women and daughters and children. But the men, that a lot of you individuals out there don't know what you're involved in. You see people doing stuff and you think, well, I could do that. So you go, you learn the breakdowns, because the breakdowns are given freely. Freely you have received, freely give. We didn't charge anybody for the camp signs. We didn't charge anybody for any of the stuff that we put out there. Like the stuff that the Lord told Ezekiel to walk in the sight of Israel with, which we used to do that back in the days. Actually walk to camp, or the elders before us would take the train, with the camp signs and all that, So before you did any of that, we didn't charge anything for any of that. So you guys got the information for free. You got the breakdowns for free. You were able to access all of our signs online. Make your own signs, make your own 12 tribe sign. We showed you how to do it, showed you how to make a garment, and you guys went out there and did this thing without actually examining what this is about and examining what it takes, to be able to stay and endure to the end in this truth. Because that's one very major thing, is if you start this truth and you don't finish, there's a penalty for that. Just as if you start the truth and you finish it, there's a reward. So a lot of you guys don't understand the seriousness of this truth. And that's why when you start getting persecuted, or when you start going through financial woes, or you start going through job woes, or women woes, or family woes, your first thing is, well, I got to give that up, because before I was dealing with that, I was good. I was cool. Everybody loved me. Now everybody hates me. Now I'm fucking broke. I'm tired of being broke. That's an inside joke. you know? So you guys didn't count the cost. And that's what happened with this individual. You know, he saw something that he liked. You know, he jumped on it. You know, like I said, the breakdowns are out there for free. People think that they could just, you know, mimic what the prophet that. No, a lot more than that. You have to be a part of the elect, and there has to be a spirit concerning this truth, this faith. No matter what them demons try to put in your mind from time to time. Oh, you're not a man of the Lord. You don't really believe this. Or so what? You know? The point is having a strong conviction in your mind that this is the truth. That's what the Apostle Paul said. Let every man be fully persuaded in his own mind. So he wasn't fully persuaded, but because he was able to memorize and to mimic things that the prophets were doing, he went out there and started a camp. You know? And then he asked for the blessing to put GMS on his name. And I told him straight up, brother, no offense, but I don't know who you are. I've seen you, but I don't really know anything about you. I really don't know you. You know, somewhere along those lines. You know, so we're not just going to give somebody the go ahead to do something, put the name of Great Millstone on there, and we don't know nothing about them. You see? So he did what he did. He's, you know, back in the world or whatever he does. And that's that. You know? And, you know, that's the bottom line. So we don't have to rethink, oh, maybe he might be an Edomite or whatever the case may be. We don't got to speak on it. Because at the end of the day, he was in it. He taught. You know, he had understanding. But, you know, he just wasn't one of the chosen plants of the Lord. And the Lord rooted him out. It's just like if you, you know, if you have a Jake, a so-called Negro-looking individual, or so-called Latino or Native American-looking individual, and they fall out the truth, we don't say, oh, he might be an Edomite, or he might be another nation. That's stupid. It's retarded. You know. So at the end of the day, you're going to have your casualties of the spiritual war. You know, he just happened to be one of them. You know. Now, do we want anybody to fall out the truth? No, we don't. But at the end of the day, the Lord is doing the sifting. Because at the end of the day, this is the Lord Yahweh B'Shem Yahushai's plans, not ours. You know? So as the Elder Apostle Gabar put in this part of his title, there's a cautionary tale pretty much to some of you guys out there. You know? So just beware, you know, and, you know, take heed. You know, and if there's anything within your spirit that you know that needs to be fixed, pray to Yahweh B'Shem Yahushai to help you with that, whatever it may be. You know? Because at the end of the day, you see what happens to individuals that pretty much be faking the funk. You know, going out there, acting like they really about this, you know, and causing all type of ruckus, so to speak. But then deep down inside, he really didn't fully believe this. Maybe he believed partially, maybe he believed certain things of it. You know, maybe he was convicted for a moment, but he had questions and whatever the case may be, and he never addressed it. He just kept building and building and building on that faulty foundation instead of examining that foundation and working that foundation out. So pretty much, like I said, that's my take on it. You know, I quoted scriptures. I didn't really bring out any precepts, you know, and I just wanted to say that because that was an interaction I had with him. And I wish I could remember what else Abu had said, but it's all good. Like a spirit, I'll go back and revisit the video and hit the point that I know was a straight up lie. Then I'll address it again, you know. But that's pretty much the bottom line, you know. So this truth is not for everybody. So like the Elder Apostle Gabar put in his title, let this be a cautionary tale to some of you individuals out there. You know what you're dealing with. Know what it entails. Count the cost. You know? Because if you're not willing to lose your woman, if you're not willing to lose your children, if you're not willing to lose your parents, brothers, sisters, or whatever, and if you're not even willing to lose your own life for this truth, then you have to ask yourself, is this really for me? You know, because you have to be willing to put it all on the line. It's not, you know, something where you could, well, I could give this up and that up, but nah, just that right there, I just can't let that go. You know, you got to be willing to just give everything up, including your own life. You see? And then that's, you know, what's going to separate the real from the fake. You know, you're going to lose shit. It's going to hurt. You know, because we're men. We have feelings. We get attached to women. We get attached to children. We get attached to relatives. But at the end of the day, are you willing to lose all of that for this truth and to win the love of Yahushua? Because Yahushua said, if you don't pick up your cross and follow me, you know, you're not worthy. You can't be my disciple. You can't be one of my disciples. You know? So with that, you know, pray that you brothers and few sisters have been edified. So the next time I say, Shalom.